All right, so we're going to start off with the team of the season most consistent for all these players here. So this is basically the lineup for the team of the season most consistent of players. We're going to look through the specific stats of each of the players and whether or not they would be worth picking up. The pricing of these cards in general are actually quite decent. 200 or so K is not a lot of money to come by nowadays, considering how trading is such a huge deal nowadays, considering how Foot Champs is rewarded with so much money, right? Maybe not necessarily worth the stress, but with the coins you can get from it, especially if you get top 100 consistently or at least an elite level, these cards aren't crazy expensive. So we're going to look at a few of them. We're going to start off here with Jamie Vardy's card. So right off the bat, he's got base card stats of 97 pace, 91 shooting, 86 dribbling, and 84 physical with 78 passing. So base card stat wise, the card looks fantastic, right? It looks like a card that would definitely be very usable in your team. And he looks like he would be very good. So we're going to look at the specifics now. So he has 97 acceleration with 97 sprint speed. Very ideal for someone if you want them to run at a decent pace. He has 87 agility with 86 bounce while being 5'10". So moving around with the ball, dribbling wise, he'll be decent. We're going to look at his traits right now. He does have tries to beat the defensive line. So this is going to be a very nice trait to have if you're going to be using Vardy in the sense of telling him to get in behind and press the back line, right? So he looks like a fantastic card to use in that sense, right? So he has 88 composure. His finishing stats are 95 with 97 shot power, but his long shots aren't crazy good. But I'm sure if you give him, I think the card would probably be a Deadeye card. So if we look at the specifics here, you would improve his passing to be in 96 passing and 64 passing if you believe in these kind of chemistry boosts. But obviously you want to improve the finishing as much as you possibly can. You won't notice a significant difference of giving him Hunter because acceleration with 97 and sprint speed with 97 is already the type of stats that you're not going to notice a huge difference with the card. Now, the big thing about this card that will make him an absolute powerhouse running wise, because here's the two things, right? So the trait of tries to beat the defensive line with acceleration 97 and 97 sprint speed with 99 aggression will make him make those really good attacking runs, right? So he has high work rates, which will be interesting in the attacking front. Obviously, he will do the high attacking work rates more than he will do the defensive work rates, but having good aggression with a striker is nice to have just to put that added pressure on defenders. So Vardy's card actually looks really good. His long passing is really poor, so if you are going to use Vardy in your team, I would highly recommend using him as a striker with somebody else. So if you're using like a 4-3-1-2 or a 4-1-2 and 2 bracket 2, it would be nice to link him up with another striker just because the long passing is poor, but his short passing is already good enough. If the Deadeye isn't working for you and you don't really care about improving his passing, I would definitely recommend putting a sniper card on him because what sniper does is that it'll improve his general feel on the ball, just moving left and right with him. He doesn't have technical dribbler, so he won't be able to do the LTRT that great, but he'll still be able to do it at a decent pace. It's just the way that the player does the technical dribbling when they actually do the trait that's different when someone actually has the actual trait and doesn't. It's just the LTRT dribbling. So he doesn't have any of that, so he's basically a runner. So you want to have someone who's decent at passing in the midfield area so that he can make those really good attacking runs. I'm sure that if you give him those instructions again of get in behind and press the back line, he's going to be a fantastic card because of the trait of tries to beat defensive line. Next card we have here is Sebastian Giovinco. Oh, also with the links of Vardy, Leicester City, English is pretty decent. You can get Sterling in the team and stuff, right? So you got some pretty good links there. Sebastian Giovinco's card, MLS player. Physical is lacking and he's also small, so that's already the type of thing that you will notice right away is the height and all those things, right? So right off the bat, Giovinco isn't really a sprinter. He's more of a really, really fast player on the ball. 4-star, 4-star is fantastic to have. 94 finishing with 89 shot power is really good. His shooting stats in general are very nice. He can take very good free kicks for you in this game as well. 98 agility, 99 balance. You'll never have to worry about him feeling like crap on the ball, essentially. If you look at his traits, he does have technical dribbler, so you'll be able to make those really short cuts with him when he's on the ball. Backs into player is an interesting one. You won't necessarily see this too often. It's interesting because he's 5'4", backing into players, so he's not going to really do a good job of that, so I wouldn't necessarily make him a target man of any sorts. But, you know, he does have the long shot taker. He does have the shooting traits in general, so his shooting in general is going to be very, very good. Again, the thing that you're going to notice with Giovinco's card is always going to be the height and the physical, right? So he does have the aggression. So running-wise, if he's accelerating and he's trying to get the ball off of someone, or he's trying to win the ball in the attacking play, he's going to do a very decent job of doing all of that, right? Stamina being 90 makes it basically possible for you to use him as a cam, and he'll be able to run around the pitch quite a lot. His passing stats in general are 89 and 84, so that's also very good. Now, the card that I would highly recommend giving him is Hunter right off the bat, right? Because you want his sprint speed to be higher, because he basically lacks at everything else, right? Since his passing is already good and his shooting is already quite decent, even though you can make it even better, his dribbling is amazing. So it would just make more sense to give him a Hunter card to improve that sprint speed, because he's definitely lacking in that department. The sprint speed is very noticeable after someone accelerates really well. So with his acceleration being decent, the sprint speed is going to be noticeably low on his card, right? But if you give him a Hunter, it'll be significantly better. I don't think as much as a +10, but it'll still be improved by a little bit. So that's Giovinco's card. He's an Italian player, so Italian links aren't necessarily too hard to come by. There's a lot of good Italian players in the game, so you won't get any strong links with him if you're looking to link him with Italian players from the MLS that are actually good, or players from TFC that are actually good. So if you're using him on your team, it would be very, very oriented around icons in your team, or even Italians in your team. That's the only way that you can actually put him in a squad that would actually be decent. But the card looks great. I think shooting-wise, he would be really good. I think that's going to be the most noticeable thing. He does have a high attacking with medium defensive work rate, so again, he'll move around the pitch quite nicely. Gomez has always been a card that is, you know, if you look at his 84 card, his 84 card just looks like a cheap version of a good player, right? He's got decent passing, decent shooting, decent pace, decent dribbling. So you know that if he were to ever get a team of the season card, it would be fantastic. And that's literally what happened, right? 99 acceleration with 91 sprint speed, with 99 agility with 99 balance. Again, similar height to Giovinco, so they're going to play very similar to each other, because if you look at the traits as well, he also does have technical dribbler with good long shots and good free kicks. So Giovinco and Gomez are going to play very, very similar to each other. The only difference is that I think Giovinco would play a little bit better, just because Giovinco has better aggression. Gomez is lacking in the aggression, so if he's, you know, running after the ball on the attack, he'll be able to outpace someone, but he won't be able to outmuscle someone because of the aggression not taking into account, right? Because a player like Conte, for instance, right? When Conte has really high aggression, really high interceptions and stuff, he aggressively tries to get the ball back. And that's why the small players can sometimes outbody Ronaldo, because of that aggression stat. So because he doesn't have it, that's definitely a thing that's definitely missing on the card. But dribbling-wise, this card is going to feel absolutely fantastic on the ball. Passing-wise, you can definitely use him as a cam, and he'll do the work there. 4-star, 4-star with a long shot taker as a trait. It'll be very nice to have with 87 shot power and 90 long shots. 90 finishing, 90 composure. So finishing-wise, you're not going to have a problem with this card. He's going to be good with both feet because he is 4-star, 4-star, and you'll have fun with him because he does also have 4-star skill moves. His stamina is also 86, so again, another very usable card. But the things that would be noticeable on the card is the height and lack of physical presence, right? And that's like the big thing with FIFA nowadays. So if you want to have fun with this card, you know, paying 310k for him, not necessarily that bad for someone who's from Argentina. You can link a lot of players with that. Argentina Calcio A, again, you can link a lot of players with that. So there's a lot to do with a player like this, right? So there's so much that can be done with players like this. Next up, we have, I'm just gonna X out of this. We have Rabiot. So Rabiot is a player that a lot of people actually wanted EA to implement into the game because he would make a fantastic midfielder, right? Now, if we look at the work rates of Rabiot's card, and we're looking at the specifics, right? His agility is great, but his balance is poor. So 6'2 with 55 balance will make him move a little bit more sluggish on the ball. Kind of similar to someone like Yaya Touré, right? 78 acceleration with 73 sprint speed is decent at best for a midfielder. But the thing that Rabiot kind of makes up for in other stats is that he's actually good at shooting the ball. He's good at passing the ball. He has decent defensive stats in general. So is it worth 210k? 210k isn't a crazy amount, right? If you want to put Rabiot on your team, you can also put like Thiago Silva and Milner or Thiago Silva and Dani Alves and have fun with that, right? So he is a left-footed player, so if you are going to be using him as a center midfield of any sorts, it would definitely be more ideal to use him on the left center mid role because I think he would be best used in that position. He does have good jumping and heading accuracy, so if you ever tell the center mid, to get into the box, he'll be really good at winning some headers in the air as well. But in terms of movement, moving left and right defensively, his sprint speed isn't necessarily that great considering the work rates that he has. He does have high attacking work rates with medium defensive work rates. So those are two things that are going to be very noticeable in the card. He's going to be more attacking oriented than defensive oriented. If he was a player that was medium high in terms of medium attacking and high defensive, it would be more ideal to use his card. But not a terrible card. It definitely looks ideal to use, but it's more of a trying out type of card. He looks like an absolute monster. It would definitely be worth trying him out as a CDM, but you will notice the high attacking work rates from time to time. But this card does look like a beast, but don't be surprised if there's specific aspects of his that you don't actually end up enjoying when you end up using this card. The traits that he has is selfish. I don't know what selfish does. I don't know if that makes his shooting better or if the players move away from him because they know that he's selfish. I'm not really sure how that works. If you were to use Rabiot's card, I would highly recommend for you to put Shadow on him because as a midfielder, he already has decent shooting stats in general. So if you give him Shadow, you'll only be improving his defensive capabilities even more in that midfield role. So if you can get it close to the 99s, right, it would definitely be more ideal to have. Also, you can improve the acceleration and sprint speed. If you believe that it is improved by this much, acceleration being 93 is a significant difference with 83 sprint speed. So if you put that shadow card and you actually notice those differences on the card, then he's going to do a lot of work for you for sure. 210k is not a crazy expensive price either. That's actually a very, very reasonable price. So the next card here that we have is Fabinho. So Fabinho is a very interesting one too because a lot of people have been asking whether or not Fabinho would be a good card to have or a poor card to have. If we look at Fabinho's card, he would be a very, very good CDM to have in your team. He has incredible defensive capabilities. He's got incredible physical capabilities, right? He's got pace, right? So if you give him 78 acceleration with 81 sprint speed, that's actually very nice to have for someone who's going to be playing a midfield role for you. With 80 agility and 78 balance, this guy is going to move very similar to Laurent Blanc in terms of moving left and right. But because Fabinho has better defensive and physical capabilities, this card is going to be very nice to use in anybody's team, right? So definitely recommend getting this card. If you guys haven't tried him already, I would recommend using him as a right center defensive mid or as just a lone CDM. The only downfall of this card is honestly the medium work rates. because medium high is obviously the best to have for a CDM, but medium is not terrible because, again, he does have decent pace to be able to come back on the defensive side and do work, right? He's got good finishing stats, which is awesome to have for someone who's going to be playing a CDM, with 90 composure and 92 shot power. So if we look at his traits, apparently he doesn't have any, which is interesting to me, but if you want to take some long shots with him, he won't be very good at doing those, but if you're getting inside the box with him, he'll actually be quite decent. I wouldn't recommend using this card as a right center mid unless your center mid sometimes pushes inside the box, but even still, he doesn't have a crazy amount of sprint speed to get back into position. So if I were to use this card, again, I would either give him Shadow or Hunter. Since his defensive stats are already very nice, Hunter would be more ideal as well, because if you can improve his shooting as much as you possibly can, it would be very helpful. But if you're thinking more on the defensive front with this card, it would be more ideal to be using a shadow card on him, because you want to be able to have a midfielder that is as good as it possibly can be with the defensive work rates. But jockeying left and right with someone like Fabinho is going to be fantastic for you, because like I said before, his acceleration, sprint speed, agility, and balance while being 6'2" is fantastic. So I've already used this version of the card, and even this version of the card moves decently considering the stats that he has. So I can only imagine what a team of the season version will feel like, right? He will also win the ball for you in the air, being 6'2" with 83 jumping, 86 strength, and 82 heading accuracy. You can choose whatever style you want with Fabinho. Like, you can tell him to be an aggressive CDM, you can tell him to be you can tell him to be a conservative CDM, and he'll play each role perfectly, because he does have 91 interceptions with 90 aggression. So if you're using him as a CDM and you ask him to cut passing lanes and stay back while attacking, he's going to do a very, very good job of doing all that. Especially since he's tall, he's going to be blocking a lot of different situations for you. So a very similar situation to Laurent Blanc. I think that this card has a lot of potential to be even better than Laurent Blanc because of the huge boost on the physical stats and the defending stats. So definitely recommend trying him out. I don't think anybody would be disappointed in that card. Maybe positioning-wise, because of the medium work rates, I would understand, but everything else on the card just looks fantastic to use. The next card we got here is Marek Hamšík. Marek Hamšík is, again, another very, very good center mid to use. The reason why he's a good center mid to use is because he's basically an all-round player, just like any other player that has around the 80s in every stat. If we look at Marek Hamšík's card, this card would be best used as a right center mid. He's not going to feel completely awful on the ball. 77 acceleration with 81 sprint speed, with 83 agility and 72 balance. It's not crazy awful for someone who's going to be playing as a center mid, because if you look at someone like Milinkovic-Savic, right, and I've tried Milinkovic-Savic's card, 65 balance is very noticeable in the card. 72 may improve it by a little bit. If you really want to make him feel better on the ball, it would be more ideal for you to give him the passing pace and the dribbling, since his shooting stats are already quite nice. And I think that card would be Engine, right? So if you can improve his balance to be in the 80s, that would be very ideal, so that he could feel somewhat similar to someone like Martial, right? His shooting stats are already quite nice. You would improve his acceleration and sprint speed, so that moving left and right with him in the midfield area would be very nice. Now, if you are going to be using Hamšík as your center mid, don't expect him to be that good for you defensively unless you give him a shadow card. If you give him a shadow card, then defensively, he'll be quite decent for you. He is high attacking work rates with medium defensive work rates, so he's more of an aggressive attacker more than he is a conservative defender. So if you're playing the playstyle of someone who wants to be very aggressive, pushing forward, scoring those goals, having a 5-star weak foot with 86 finishing and 92 composure with 91 shot power and 92 long shots. That 92 long shots is very nice to have with someone who has a 5-star weak foot and the long shot trait. So that's going to be a very good card to try out. 97 stamina. This guy's never going to get tired for you in the game. 81 jumping is very nice to have, considering that he is already 6 foot. So he will be able to win the ball in the air for you at times, depending on who the opposition is. His passing stats are fantastic, so you'll be able to do some quick passing plays with him. 97 short passing, 90 long passing is very, very nice. The free kick stats, I would say, is... I wouldn't say it's necessarily irrelevant, but most of the times when you take free kicks with the players, you do like the actual tactics, like laying it off to someone so that you have a better chance of scoring, right? But this card does look really good. Again, if you're focusing more on the attacking front, maybe even giving him a hunter wouldn't be bad either to make his shooting absolutely god tier. Again, don't really expect him to do that much for you defensively. He'll do an okay job defensively, but not as good as someone like Fabinho, obviously, because Hamsik is more of an attacking style of player. If you actually use him as a central cam, he would actually be quite decent because, like I said, the passing is already very good, the shooting is already very good, the pace is very good. 5-star weak foot with good passing is very nice to have if you want to make passes at very, very odd angles. So he's going to be a very good card to use in your team. Napoli, you can put Koulibaly in there. Koulibaly, you'll probably get like a team of the season of some sorts. I think Koulibaly is actually one of the most consistent, if I'm not... Yeah, so he'll probably get a team of the season. So you can get an easy link there, and then you can get like Jordan Lukaku or something as a left back, and then you'll have a solid base to work around there for sure. But yeah, definitely worth trying out this card. That 5-star weak foot will make a huge difference on making this card really good or bad. I think his finishing would be very nice to have in anybody's team. Next card we have here is Lamar. I've actually tried Lamar in the team of the season, and the one thing that I've noticed with these cards is that when their pace and their dribbling stats in general are very good, they tend to have a very good balance of just moving really nicely on the ball. So that's why I always tell people, if you want players to dribble really quickly, 92 acceleration, 89 sprint speed, 93 agility, 92 balance, very nice to have. Considering he's also 5'6", so he's never going to move poorly on the ball. If you look at his traits, he also has technical dribbler, and if you guys watch the streams and you watch the draft that I was playing him with, I noticed right away that he had technical dribbler. I'm like, okay, Lamar has technical dribbler, because it's very noticeable with his card. He has corner specialist, so I guess he takes more accurate corners, but that really depends on you if you want to actually use him as a corner kick taker in general. He does have 3-star skill moves, which isn't necessarily ideal to have, in my opinion. He has a 2-star weak foot, which again, very noticeable. It doesn't matter how good his shooting stats are, because look, he has 89 finishing, 93 shot power, 86 long shots, right? With good composure. But when he was on his 2-star weak foot, those specific moments where you want him to take a really good shot, he just doesn't really take them that well, right? But this card is a lot of fun to use. His passing is very nice. He's very aggressive off the ball and on the ball because his pace is so good. And he's small, right? So he just moves left and right really smoothly, right? 71 aggression is decent to have on the attacking front and the defensive front, considering that his pace, again, is also very decent. Shooting stats, 86 positioning, 89 finishing, 93 shot power, 86 long shots. Very nice to have. The volleys and the penalties are not that relevant with these players, so don't worry about those too much. The volleys would definitely be nice for it to be higher, just so you can have more fun with the game if you're doing all these crazy skill moves and you want to hit it first time. He'll be very good to use. But generally speaking, the card does look very nice to use. You will 100% notice the lack of physical and the lack of the 4-star in any of skill moves or weak foot. So on the ball, he's going to be fantastic. Off the ball, defending wise, moving left and right with him, he'll be decent. Not amazing because his height isn't that great. But he'll definitely be a very decent card to use in anybody's team. All right, so the next card that we have here is Gerard Piqué. So with Piqué's card, right off the bat, I wouldn't even touch this card. Very similar to his Team of the Year version of his card last year. His Team of the Year, I didn't really like last year either. If I don't remember exactly how to search through this, it's FIFA 17 players, right? So the reason why this card I don't like personally is because poor balance, poor acceleration. Moving left and right with Piqué is so annoying to do. It's always been annoying because of those specific stats, right? Obviously, he has great physical capabilities. His passing is fantastic. His defending capabilities are fantastic. But it's the movement left and right with him that's just absolutely poor to have, because you want to be able to move with agility left and right, because if people make those passes in behind your defense and your player can't turn quick enough to be able to go ahead and try to reach the ball after someone passes you like that, it's not necessarily ideal. Because if you actually look at his work rates in general, he is an aggressive defender with high attacking work rates and medium defensive work rates. That's not nice to have for someone who's 60 acceleration, because again, if he's caught out of position because he's an aggressive defender, he's not necessarily going to be fun to try to drag back into position, because he's going to be put in a place where he's always going to be trying to come back on defense, and that's not necessarily ideal to have. So in regards to a review with PK, a typical, I would give him shadow. I give shadow to most of the center backs. I don't ever give anchor, because I want them to be as good as they possibly can defensively. But I don't even think that giving a PK a shadow card will even be a saving grace at any point, because I don't think it's improved by this much. And the balance being 50 with 6'4" height is just not going to be ideal to use in anybody's team, in my opinion. But there's a lot of people that used Team of the Year PK last year and they liked him, but I just never really thought that PK was a good card to use at all. I'm actually interested with his passing stats, because they actually gave him 99 short passing with 98 long passing. So he looks like a decent card, and again, obviously physically he's going to be a very good card as well. It's more just the movement left and right with him, the jockey movement, that it just isn't going to work out really well for him, in my opinion. The next card we have here is Chiellini. So with Giorgio Chiellini, 511k is not bad for this card. So obviously, right off the bat, his acceleration is kind of low. But it's not low enough where it's like, oh my god, this card's terrible, because you have to understand that he is a low-high work-rated player. So again, if you give him a shadow card, which again is the most ideal that you can possibly give, with his defensive stat, this one, because his defensive stats are already quite high, it would actually be nice to give him an anchor so that you can improve on his other stats as well, because it's already going to be basically 99. His pace, his acceleration, sprint speed is going to be this apparently, right? So he'll move quite decently. If we actually reset the chemistry style, 73 acceleration with 73 agility, 80 balance is not terrible to have for this Chiellini card, considering that he is a low-high work-rated player. So he's not going to be pushed up like crazy. So tracking back with him isn't going to be crazy to do, right? He's going to be very, very solid for you defensively, because of how good his defensive stats actually are. And because he's low-high work-rated player, and I'm going to keep mentioning that because that's the most important reason as to why the pace and dribbling together isn't a big deal, is because he'll move really, really nicely on and off the ball. He's got great passing stats, which is always very nice to have. It doesn't matter what anybody says, it's always a nice thing to have. He has 99 shot power randomly, but with poor long shots and poor finishing. So definitely worth getting this card if you're looking for someone in the Serie A that is a very conservative defender that likes to absorb a lot of pressure. He's going to do a very good job at doing all that. In relations to his regular card, the stat increases are very, very significant to making him a very good card or a very bad card. So definitely worth looking into Chiellini there. If you give him a shadow card, his acceleration's only going to get better, right? So that's what I would personally either give him anchor or shadow. I would try out both in game to see which one I prefer, but anchor definitely looks like the best bet with this card. Very nice to have a center back that actually has good passing stats. Those are kind of things that people don't look at as often, but it's nice to be able to do a driven pass across goal or a nice little cross easily with players that actually have very good passing stats. Schul is an interesting one, because regardless of whether or not people may or may not like him, he's going to move absolutely terribly off the ball if you want to be able to move left and right smoothly with him. He's not going to do a good job of it at all. He doesn't even have better like he's 6'4", which is nice, but his jumping is so poor that the headers that he'll win on the air, it won't even be based off of him jumping, because most players, if you're coming against people that have like crazy squads, they're gonna outbody this guy like crazy in the air because of the lack of jumping. He does have 99 strength, which definitely helps his card to be a little bit better. And he does also have long shots. So if you want to pop in those bad boys with 90 long shots and 99 shot takers, definitely looks good. Dives into tackles is actually very nice to have for the defensive stats, so that, if someone takes a shot, that slide tackle that's really overpowered that the AI actually ends up doing, it'll be very, very effective with this card. But this is definitely not a card that I would use myself. It looks okay, but it wouldn't be a card that that I would use myself. The acceleration with the general feel of how he feels moving left and right with him are just not gonna work out that well. What traits do you look for in defenders? So obviously Sergio Ramos, I think, is the only... It's Sergio Ramos and Maldini, I think, that has the power header trait. Power header trait is very, very nice to have if you're trying to win a corner or if you're defending and you want someone to actually be good at winning the ball in the air. Those are the only ones. I think in regards to traits with defenders, there's not really much to go by, but those two traits are very noticeable. So the dives into tackle will be noticeable, but to put him into a position where he can do that trait to the best of his ability is going to be a tough call. Now, the saving grace of this card would be if he was low-high, which he ends up not being at all. So that's a little bit of a downfall with the card. If you give him anchor, you'll improve his physical capabilities a little bit. His aggression being higher will definitely be a little bit helpful in regards to tracking someone down and winning the ball off of them, right? But if he does have the power header trait, it would be also another saving grace. But unfortunately, he doesn't actually have that. Thibaut Courtois, I always tell people this all the time, man. I don't think it's worth spending the money on the goalkeepers because, genuinely speaking, I had him in a draft and he still conceded the shitty goals that goalies that aren't De Gea and Farman concede. That's why I wish that the leg save trait wasn't a trait in FIFA. I wish it was just a thing that goalies would randomly do from time to time. But that leg save trait is so overpowered that it honestly makes someone like a team of the season Courtois not worth getting over a regular David De Gea card, just because of that leg save trait as well as good goalkeeping stats. Because we don't know the difference of what actually makes a goalie better from this version of the card to this version of the card. You don't necessarily notice it too much because the positioning and stuff is very, very similar with like someone like David De Gea's card, who is a 90 rated card. But yeah, it's really not worth getting a team of the season card, in my opinion. Stats wise, he looks great. 91 positioning is great, but again, you don't notice it too much between an 85 positioning and a 91 positioning. Although it may be there, he doesn't necessarily catch my eye in terms of like, oh wow, I really like the way he's positioned right now to be able to block shots. It doesn't really catch my eye too much. So in regards to team of the season goalkeepers, that's going to be my review for most of them. If they're not David De Gea or Farman, not really worth getting, right? All right, so next up we have the bench to work with. So we're going to start off with the O block, again with team of the season goalkeepers. The only reason, right, that you would get these goalkeepers, like they look like good goalkeepers, and if you end up liking them in your team, that's awesome. The only reason why it would be cool to have someone like O block be one of your players as a team of the season card is only because of chemistry links, right? So in regards to O block, he's from Slovenia. There's not really much to go by from Slovenia to put him as a center back or whatnot, right? But the other thing would be if you're an Atletico Madrid fan or you want to put an Atletico Madrid goalkeeper or a center back to be able to link up with other players, then that would be very nice to have. Another reason why you would probably get this card is because, you know, Liga Santana doesn't have that many good goalkeepers, but they do have an informed Ter Stegen who's actually pretty decent. And guess why? Because he has the leg save traits with good goalkeeping stats in general. So again, another card that's very usable to use, but not really worth picking up for 200k because they don't really offer you that much unless you're putting them in a team that gives you that chemistry in the squad that you need. So that's in regards to the goalkeepers. CDM Martinez. So Martinez actually got a FUT birthday card as well. And the FUT birthday card is basically not so different from the team of the season version, but the team of the season version obviously has better defensive and physical capabilities. Now, in regards to this card, right, he's medium work rates, and he has poor acceleration, sprint speed, agility, and balance, right? In regards to this card, right, I would never be caught dead using this card. But would it be a fun card to use? Yes, there's a lot of potential with the card being a fun card to use because If you look at the traits, he has dives into tackles, so that's very nice to have for someone who's going to be playing as a CDM. You can't really ask him to be an aggressive CDM for you because he's not going to do a good job of doing any of that, right? So it would be more ideal to keep him as a conservative CDM and just basically conserve pressure or absorb the pressure when people are pushing him. You never want him to push out of position, although he will do it himself at times because he does have medium work rates. But defensively, he looks good. Physically, he looks good. But I wouldn't necessarily use this Javi Martinez in my team, but he definitely looks like a card that's worth trying out. But moving left and right with him isn't going to be ideal. His pace is too low, considering that he's also medium, so not necessarily a card that I would use personally. Sergio Busquets' card. Sergio Busquets, the problem with this card is always the pace, right? Sergio Busquets is one of the best midfielders in the world, one of the best CDMs in the world, and the reason why his card, it's not necessarily unusable, but it's not ideal to have because he's going to basically move like Fellaini around the pitch with better defensive and physical capabilities. Those defensive and physical capabilities are not noticeable unless the player himself has better pace to get into positions in a better way, right? Because if you look at his traits, he doesn't have any, but he does also have medium work rates. So medium work rates with 57 pace is not necessarily ideal to have. He doesn't have any... It's not that he doesn't have any shooting capabilities. He does have a few, but not ideal enough for you to spend 165k, which, to be fair, is not really a lot if you're a fan of Barcelona's, to put in your team and be able to use him. His aggression and his interceptions are good, but I wouldn't necessarily tell him to cut passing lanes and stay back while attacking unless his positioning is actually really good with cut passing lanes and stay back while attacking. So he looks like a decent card to try out. I wouldn't necessarily buy him myself because, again, he's going to move in a very sluggish manner left and right if you're trying to defend with him properly. The next card we have here is Malcolm. So I was reviewing Malcolm earlier in the stream, and Malcolm just looks like a fantastic card to use, right? 93 acceleration with 86 sprint speed, so obviously right off the bat, you gotta give him Hunter. That's just a for sure thing. You gotta give this card a Hunter. Nothing else belongs on this card. Dribbling wise, he's going to be fantastic. If you look at his traits, he also has the dribbler and speed dribbler. So if you're the type of guy that likes to run and be able to move left and right really quickly without having to let go of right trigger, he's going to do a very good job at doing all of that, right? So on the ball, he'll move really nicely. Off the ball, not necessarily so sure. Attacking wise, he could be okay because he does have 90 positioning. So if you're using him in a 4-3-3, for instance, and you're using him as a right winger on the right side, he might be in good positions for you to lay off the ball to him for him to play a little bit better. So definitely looks like a good card in general. 4-star is nice to have. The other traits are not crazy noticeable, but if you look at his card, giving him a Hunter would definitely be more ideal. If you give him a Hawk, you would also be improving his shooting pace and physical. So improving the physical so that he has a little bit more strength is okay, but I wouldn't necessarily do it because you will kind of notice the aggression considering that his acceleration and sprint speed is quite decent. If you look at his shooting stats in general, he does have 87 finishing with 87 shot power and 83 composure. 83 composure isn't crazy good, but it makes the card very usable. He's going to be an awesome card to use. He's going to move really well on the ball. He's going to move really well off the ball because his positioning is very good. And he's just going to be a very, very fun card to use in anybody's team. 199k is not a lot for this card, again, because of the things that you are getting in return for what this game is basically offering you. So not a terrible card as well. If you play him as a cam, he wouldn't be that bad either, considering that he does have 89 short passing with 77 long passing, which isn't terrible at all. So definitely a usable card in that sense as well. I think this is Sven Bender, Lars Bender. So Lars Bender, honestly, if you look at this card, right, he's high work rate. So you can't use him as a CDM, but he will be cut out of position at times, right? His shooting stats aren't terrible. If you look at his traits, he has dives into tackles, so that's very nice to have for someone who's going to be playing as a CDM for you. Moving left and right with him wouldn't be terrible with this card because his agility and balance isn't completely, it's not ideal, but it's not completely awful, right? While being 6 foot tall. So moving left and right with him will be okay. I think his composure on the ball while trying to lay off passes to people will be all right as well. He doesn't really have a 4-star weak foot. He doesn't really have a 4-star weak foot, so it's not necessarily nice to have as well. But his finishing stats are decent if you're going to be using him as a CDM and not necessarily as a center mid. I would not recommend using this card as a center mid whatsoever. But if you're, a fan of the Bundesliga and you want to just get a good CDM and you don't really know any other options, this isn't really a bad card to get. His aggression and interceptions are very good. His sliding tackle and sliding tackle, which is the most important thing with CDMs being very good. He's very good at doing as well. And because his slide tackles and sliding tackles are very good, it's also going to help that he is 6 foot tall. So he's going to do those things more effectively because of the extra height advantage that he actually has on his card. All right, so next up we have here is Gaya's card. So Gaya has a very, very decent left back card. He's going to feel probably like a better version of Jordi Alba's card because he does also have the jumping stats. So if we look at Jordi Alba's card, right, the thing that I always told people that is the problem with this card, right, is he does only have 83 jumping while being 5'6". But if you look at Gaya's card, he has 89 jumping while being 5'7". So if you're using him as a fullback, he won't necessarily be that bad at winning the ball in the air at times. But it depends on who he's up against as well, right? So if we look at this card, off the ball, he's going to move amazingly well. If you want him to catch up to people, right, and you give him a shadow card, which is honestly the most generic thing that you should probably give him, let's be honest, because his other stats are already quite nice. It's either shadow or anchor on the card. If you give him anchor, he'd be very good as well, right? So anchor would probably be more ideal because you would improve his pace, defending, and physical quite a lot, but his passing stats is very nice. The reason why passing stats being very good is nice to have is because it's those outside the foot, not the outside the foot, but when the ball is just about to go outside and you want to just curve it just inside, Gaia is going to do a very good job at doing that because he does have 87 long passing with 90 short passing. So if you give him an anchor card, you'll be improving in his physical presence by a little bit because having high aggression with good pace and good feeling on the ball with good agility, balance, and all that, he's going to move very nicely on the ball. High attacking work rates with medium defensive. If you want to tell him to be an aggressive attacker, he'll do a decent job at doing that. His finishing stats aren't crazy good, so if you want him to always overlap and you know that he's going to take those shots, obviously you'd put a hunter on the card to be more attacking oriented, but I would definitely recommend putting an anchor on him instead. But this card looks fantastic to use. I think it would basically be a steroid version of Jordi Alba's card, so definitely worth looking into for sure. He looks like a really, really good card. Alisson, again, typical thing. The only reason, chat, or guys, is with Alisson's card, the only reason why it would be worth picking up Alisson's card is because of having a Calcio A goalkeeper, right? A Calcio A goalkeeper that is from Roma and Brazil. There's so much you can do with that, right? If you're from Brazil, you could put like Thiago Silva in the team and do that thing with Rabiot and Munier, right? If you're from Roma, you can do the Manolas, Jordan Lukaku, Nangolan thing or whatever, right? There's a lot of different links you could go with, especially for 82K. It's not necessarily that bad, right? It's nice to actually have a good goalkeeper from Roma just so you can do those things with Manolas if you really, really want to. So that's the only reason that I would recommend getting Alisson as a goalkeeper. But as you guys know, again, I just really like players like David De Gea and Farman. Those guys are just the most ideal to use. Boateng's card. Boateng is another card that people have been wondering about as to whether or not I would like this card. Now, this card as a center mid is going to play really, really well for you. Very, very similar to feel to someone like Marek Hamšík with more of a physical capability. This card actually looks really good. 88K is very, very cheap for this card. If you're using this card as a right center mid, he's going to be awesome. If you're going to be using this card as a CDM, he's going to be awesome because he has great defensive stats, great physical stats. The only problem with this card, and I hate that EA did this with him, 72 stamina. As a midfielder, right, you'll notice that the stamina is going to deplete in those dying minutes of the game. But generally speaking, 72 stamina is not terrible. So as a center mid playing on a right center mid role or a right center defensive mid role where you're telling him to stay back while attacking, he's going to be very nice to have. You know why? Because his shooting stats in general are fantastic. And if you look at his traits, he has long shot taker. So if you want to use this card and you want to be able to take those long shots and have fun with him in general, because he is also 4-star, which is amazing to have fun with this card. He'll just be a ton of fun to use. 88k for this card is piss cheap considering how good he'll actually play for you in the game in a right center mid role. Try him out though, because for me personally, I would notice that balance being low. But I would have to see if certain stats would compensate for that. Because let's just say, for instance, since his shooting stats are already very good and his defensive stats are already very good, if I want him to be more attacking oriented and I gave him engine, it does increase the balance by a little bit. Maybe not so much by that much, but increasing the passing, increasing the acceleration and sprint speed, as well as the dribbling, will definitely make this card feel more like a beast in the game. The next card we have going on here is Fernando. So Fernando is the card that I packed the other day for 44k. I actually looked at Fernando's in-game stats, and he's actually a very, very good CDM to have in your team. He's going to play very similar to someone like Conte, but even better because of the physical presence that he actually has in the game. So definitely worth trying out Fernando in anybody's team. If you're using him as a CDM, I would definitely recommend giving him the shadow card. If we look at his traits, he has playmaker, which is not necessarily that bad to have if you're going to be using him as a CDM, right? It's nice to have with the passing stats in general, because he does have 87 short passing with 91 long passing. If you think that his defensive stats are good enough, which to be honest, I don't think they are. I think if you give him a shadow, it'll be even better. As a CDM, you want your player to be as solid defensively as he possibly can. So I think that this card, no questions asked, would be an absolute monster to use in the game, because he just has all the right stats to make him very good. But try using Shadow or try using Hunter on him, depending on what your game style is, to help you out the most in terms of trying to finish some opportunities. Because having a CDM that does have good long shots and good shot power is pretty ideal to have. So definitely worth trying him out in anybody's team. Van Ginkel or Van Hinkel. I think it's Van Ginkel or Ginkel. I'm not really sure the pronunciation. Another card. Very, very solid card to have. But again, you will always notice the presence that he has on the ball is going to be somewhat slow, or it's going to be very slow because he doesn't have technical dribbler. 72 acceleration with 61 balance is not necessarily ideal to have. But if you use this card as a CDM, he'll be okay for you. He would be most better used as a right center mid, considering that he is a player who is right-footed with a 4-star weak foot, right? Because if you're using him as a right center mid, he'll be able to take some pretty decent shots for you because he does have good shooting stats in general. On the ball, he's going to feel very awkward because he is 6'1" with 72 acceleration. So moving left and right with him could present to be a problem, but the card definitely looks like the type where it's worth trying out. I also think that Promise is a card that might get a team of the season as well. So if you can link him up with Van Ginkel's card, he would be really, really cool to use for sure. So definitely worth a try in the game. His shooting stats are quite nice with good composure, so he could actually be a lot better in game, but I would definitely try him out before jumping to conclusion with him. Someone like Fernando, you can jump to conclusion with because he has all the right stats to. If you try him out, there's a big chance you're probably going to like the card. But Van Ginkel, there's certain things that you may or may not notice when you're playing with him. Decor is another card that moving left and right with him is going to be piss poor, but I have used this card sometimes in the draft, and it actually did okay for me. So I think his team of the season would definitely be a decent improvement on the card. I think they should have increased his pace in terms of the acceleration by a tiny bit. If they don't want to give him the agility, I get it, but 67 acceleration is a little bit low for him. I think making it a little bit better would have been nice, but his defensive stats are quite nice. If you're using him as a CDM, 79 marking isn't terrible. If you give him a shadow card, right, He has all the right stats to be a pretty solid center defensive mid who has medium work rates. Doesn't have a 4-star weak foot, which kind of sucks, but his shooting stats in general are actually quite nice to have as well. If you're playing him as a CDM, it's always nice to have a CDM that can actually shoot the ball effectively in your team. Last but not least, we got Robertson. Robertson is the type of card that is probably one of the best left backs in the EPL at this point, because he has all the right stats to make him a very good left back. He's got a decent pace, decent passing stats, decent dribbling, decent physical, and decent defending. Now, if you get this card, 179k isn't crazy, but it's not necessarily full meta. If you use this card, it would be really fun to try out a team that has like a record breaker James Milner, a Van Dijk, and then a Robertson. So you can get that full triple link with them and then do whatever that you want with them in the team. But stuff that you will notice for a fullback, the acceleration being 83 is a little bit low if you want them to accelerate quickly to, like if a pass is made behind him and you want him to accelerate quickly to that general area, it would be very ideal to have him with better acceleration, in my opinion. His aggression being 80 is okay, but again, if you were to get this card, I would highly recommend either giving him Shadow so that you can boost his pace as much as you possibly can, and then also apparently the dribbling is a +1 on the Shadow. I think that's a glitch, but yeah, it would improve the pace and defending, so that's probably the most ideal chemistry style that you can probably give the card. But that is going to conclude the video for today, guys. That's pretty much all the Team of the Season players from the most consistent Team of the Season players. A lot of good options here that will definitely help out with chemistry links and just really good meta in each position. So a lot of good cards here that are worth trying out. Some of them are not really worth trying out in my opinion, but again, my opinion is only my opinion. You guys have to try out these cards yourself in game to see if you would really like them or would not like them. But that is going to conclude today's video. If you guys did enjoy it, please drop a thumbs up on it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.